It's been 26 years since a man named Bernie Little brought a boat named Miss Budweiser into the forefront of eastern Washington for the first time ever. It was one of a dozen different boats looking for victory that day, and with an average speed of more than 94 miles per hour, driver Bill Brow handed Bernie Little and the Miss Bud their first ever victory in the sport of hydro racing. But it hasn't stopped there. Over the next quarter century, Little and his hard-charging crew have continued to push the bounds of hydro technology, taking the sport to a new and awesome level of performance that race fans and beauty queens of the 60s had never before imagined. Well, since that first Atomic Cup victory in July of '66, the Miss Bud has won a total of 70 races and 11 National High Points Championships. It set the standards of hydro racing for everyone. It used to be lonely at the top, but not anymore. In the 1980s, only the cream of the crop came equipped with jet-powered turbine engines. But today, it's standard fare for the most powerful boats in the world. And first in line for a shot at that title is the Winston Eagle, a makeover of last year's world champion Circus boat. Driver Mark Tate and crew are hoping to not only win the Columbia Cup, but to take over the lead in total points for the entire year. Another boat looking for room at the top is the Ellis Park Hydro of Seattle, Washington. And just behind them, the Miss Madison and the American Spirit. The Miss Bud's a 5-time winner and the defending champion here in the Tri-Cities, but make no mistake, its lead over the rest of the pack is getting very little indeed.
The Columbia Cup post-race show live from Columbia Park, sponsored by Ranch and Home, by Allen Bruckey Law Offices, brought to you in part by M&R Repair and by Russ Dean Ford Nissan.
Good evening, everyone. We're standing on the banks of the Columbia River, and until today, perhaps the two most famous men to ever come down these shores were Lewis and Clark. But today, two different men stole the show. Scott Pierce driving the Miss Bud and Mark Tate driving the Winston Eagle. Hello, everyone. I'm Jeff Rickett along with Jim Hall. And Jim, those two really put on a great show today. Probably not the one they wanted to put on, but it was incredible nevertheless.
An unbelievable day of racing here on the Columbia. The new scoring system, the new format changes. We had some great racing. The Winston Eagle ended up winning the race. We even had a flip today. The Frosted Flakes boat with Mike Hansen went upside down in the final, but the good news to that story is that Mike will be okay. And just totally, everybody just on the edges of their seats all day long. It was that exciting.
All right, one of the most memorable Columbia Cups in recent years, and we'll be back to tell you about it after this. Over the past 4 days, the Tri-Cities have been transformed into a sleepy little burg, into the center of excitement in the Thunderboat racing world, the Unlimiteds. And they were here this week trying to qualify for the first 3 days to get in to the qualifying heats today.
That's right, Jeff, and they did some unique work with the qualifying this year. They shortened down the time period. You had to draw for your time period on when you could go, on what order you could go, and they only had two-hour qualifying sessions on Friday and Saturday, so it was really condensed. Basically another idea to please the fans.
And not everyone qualified this year. You need to go at least 100 miles an hour on Friday or Saturday during qualifying to get in. And there were a couple of boats, most notably the Tri-Cities' own Edge gel boat, that didn't make that.
That's true. The Rut boys had some tough work today, and they didn't get in the show, but as you'll find out a little bit later as we get into this show, they were pretty busy today nonetheless.
Now, once you do qualify, they take the fastest boats and make them compete against each other, and the slower boats and make them compete against each other in heats of A and heats of B. The fast boats go in Heat A. Let's take a look at Heat 1A this afternoon as all the racing got started at 11:30 in the morning. And you take a look at them right there, 5 of the fastest boats in the world right there, and you will see eventually Mark Tate and the Winston Eagle in the brightly colored red that would edge out Scott Pierce right here towards the end.
One quick point on that, the American Spirit and Mark Evans got a great start on that, but Tate just was able to blow by them, took care of Scotty Pierce and the Budweiser, and Mark Tate ran an excellent race to pick up that first heat victory. 137 miles an hour his average speed.
That's right. And then in Heat 1B, it really belonged to T+ all the way. And that, of course, was Steve David jumping out into the lead and going wire to wire to qualify easily right there.
And he's another turbine, a lot of turbines. In fact, that fast boat heat, all turbines, and Steve David drives the turbine, and he had a very good day here on the Columbia River.
All right, and then the big heat of the day. We didn't know it was going to be the biggest heat of the day. Heat 2A, and that was appropriate with the wording heat. There was a lot of heat in there. Let's go to the videotape and take a look at some of the action from Heat 2A, Jim.
Again, we've got the fast boats wired in there together with Mark Tate and Scotty Pierce, as well as George Woods Jr. in the Super Golf. And they collided actually before the race actually started. The Budweiser collided with the Winston Eagle, and both boats had some serious problems. You see the wing coming off.
That's right, the wing comes off of the Winston Eagle right there, and we didn't know it at the time, but the Bud was even more damaged.
No tail on the Budweiser there in 4th place.
Take a look at it coming in on the last lap. Now, despite the problems, Tate still brought the Winston Eagle into the first place, but the Bud boat was really in trouble. 2 gaping holes on the left sponson, and also a little bit of damage to the left rear, and it was in big, big trouble.
And after Scotty Pierce was none too happy with the way Mark Tate drove in that race, and as we'll hear, Scotty was upset, and later Mark Tate ended up getting a 1-lap penalty as well as fine, but Scott Pierce pulled no punches.
And he just did it again here today. He just bared right out and just crashed right into us. It was very obvious.
Is that what caused his tail to fall off too after that?
Sure, yeah. Did the same thing in Indiana.
Well, the Winston just flat ran over the back of it. I mean, he seems to have a honing pigeon for this boat. And you know, the thing that really disappoints me is not that he ran it over again, which is, you know, kind of a personal thing between he and I. I mean, obviously the referees are going to have to look at his driving.
Pierce and Little say he just ran over the back of their boat. Is that how you saw it?
No, absolutely not. You know, I don't feel that that transaction happened at all.
Winston Eagle crew was very adamant about that. They didn't feel that they were truly to blame for that crash, but you can see the boat damage to both of these unlimited hydroplanes right here. As a matter of fact, we talked about the severe damage to the Miss Bud, 2 big holes in the left sponson and big trouble in the back, and that left them in trouble for their upcoming heats.
Penalized him 1 lap. He did not win that heat. They penalized him 1 lap for bearing out on you, fined him $300, and that's ridiculous.
Well, $300 doesn't buy the bolts it takes to put the wing back on. I mean, they gave him a lap in Madison, and he took us out of the race, so it was a sure win there. You know, it's real disappointing. I mean, they're letting him get away with bloody murder.
Of course, we've had some classic duels here on the Columbia River throughout the years, all the way back to the Bill Munsey and Dean Chenoweth when they raced deck to deck here. Chip Hanauer and Tom Deeth, I can remember, had a few heated moments with each other. Chip Hanauer, Jim Crawfeld, and again, it seems like we have a new relationship starting up here with Mark Tate and Scott Pierce.
And there was more to that relationship as the day went on. We'll be back to talk more about that and a look at the last chance heat in just a moment. Well, we've been talking about it throughout the half hour, the last chance heat. That's a new wrinkle to hydroplane racing as well this year.
That's right, Jeff. Of course, we have so many fast boats with all the turbines here in town today, and it gives a chance to the slower boats that they can go out and have one more race against themselves in the winner of that race, and actually the top 2 go in. One would be an alternate, but it's the last chance, as they say, to get in for one boat to get into the final heat. And as we take a look at that last chance, you'll only see a couple of boats on here. A lot of boats had some mechanical problems today, and were not able to get into it. But boy, this was a whale of a race, even though there were only 2 boats in it. The Frosted Flakes with Michael Hansen and the American Spirit, that red, white, and blue boat driven by Mark Evans out of Chelan. And these guys put on a great show.
They really did. As a matter of fact, this was one of the fastest heats of the day. They averaged better than 140 miles per hour in competition. Keep in mind that for a championship heat, the course record is just a little bit over 124 miles an hour.
And again, they went dual. They only had to go 3 laps again, but they went dueling around the course for 3 laps head-to-head. They knew where. That's the nice thing about having 2 boats in a race. You know where the other guy's at.
Indeed, and as you can see, it was Kellogg's Frosted Flakes with Mike Hansen pulling out just ahead of the American Spirit right there. They came around to the end, and it was the American Spirit that qualified for the championship heat, but you get a trailer boat with 6 boats in the field. The 7th is a trailer, and that would be the American Spirit, driven by Mark Evans. He started the championship heat 15 seconds behind the rest of the field.
Boy, oh boy. They are really racing out there as they come.
So we set the stage for an exciting final heat here on the Columbia River to decide the champion of the 1991 Columbia Cup. And great racing to this point, and wait till we get the final. Some fireworks, needless to say, in this final heat of the racing today.
And again, one big chance for the Budweiser crew to work on that boat, because from the time that the Heat 3A finished to the time we had the championship heat, 2 hours of interval time in between there, a great opportunity for that crew to try and repair the damage to that boat. And we'll be back to take a look at that championship heat right after this. We had been out here for 4 hours in the hot sun, and we had seen a lot of action. We had seen some great heats, and of course the controversy was brewing between the Miss Budweiser and the Winston Eagle. Mark Tate and Scott Pierce, 2 very different men. Scott Pierce, he's self-confident, self-assured. When you're talking to him, there's no doubt that he's in charge. Mark Tate, very quiet and soft-spoken, but he gets it done on the race course.
That he does, and known as a hard-charging driver, and that Mark Tate is. Now, we talked about all the different restructuring of this format. One of the key things that we got to point out to you is the lane assignments. They draw for these lane assignments before each race, and obviously, the Budweiser and the Winston, it's tough for whoever gets on the outside of the other. It's tougher for that boat, and so each race, when they drew, the heat assignments were extremely important.
And keep in mind that Miss Budweiser, with the severely damaged left sponson, is all the way on the outside, and Winston Eagle and Mark Tate, perfect position in number 3 right there. Let's take a look at how the championship Columbia Cup 1991 unfurled.
Well, then we heard from Scotty Pierce talking about the chances of his boat being able to run competitively in the final, and boy, he came out flying.
On the outside, those boats
He certainly did. He came right out off the gun, really started to leave from start to finish, and Scott Pierce coming way outside from that last lane, started to make a hard charge, and surprisingly, with all the damage, he was running a hard second, and actually at the time was starting to close some ground on Mark Tate.
Well, Mark Tate just kept right on in it. He grabbed that lead, and he was able to sustain that lead for pretty much the bulk of this race, which obviously turned out to be shortened, which we'll touch on in a moment.
Right. They were in the middle of coming into the 3rd complete lap of a 5-lap race, and coming up in just a minute here, we'll try to keep our cameras trained on the Frosted Flakes Miss Madison boat, driven by Mike Hansen. As you see the battle unfolding there between Tate and Pierce, coming out of the first turn at the start of lap 4, he caught a lot of air, went up, tried to hold it down, and then over on top of the back. He sat there for a few minutes, submerged in the water. Of course, he's got oxygen feeding into him, as you see it again in regular time motion, but he's got oxygen hooked up to him, so that was not a problem. They needed to get there to find out if he was going to be severely injured. Meanwhile, let's go back to the other boats that were on the course. They really weren't sure what exactly was going on, and Mark Tate was on his way to winning the 1991 Columbia Cup. Probably would have won it anyway, but this was the end of his 4th lap as he starts to pull back the throttle a little bit and take it back into the pits.
Well, and as for Michael Hansen, they brought him in. The rescue crew got to him within a minute, and they brought him in, and he was okay. That's his family members obviously very concerned, but Mike, we are told, taken to Kennewick General Hospital. He's okay. He's obviously banged and bruised up a little bit, but nothing life-threatening, and boy, that's always good to hear. And I know there was a collective sigh of relief and some cheers, and you can see the damage to the boat. Just unbelievable, and we aren't sure what the status for the Madison Frosted Flakes boat will be next week in Seattle.
All right, so there you have it. Mike Hansen fortunate to walk away. That was good news. And in the shortened race, they called it a day. The Winston Eagle wins the 1991 Columbia Cup. The Miss Budweiser with all the damage. Scott Pierce, what an effort that crew put forth today to get him into second place. The Miss T Plus with Steve David had a great afternoon. Super Range Golf was in there along with the Pepsi American Spirit.
And a real quick note about that Super Range boat. You probably remember that boat that ran the past couple of years with the Mr. Pringles. And George Woods brought that over here, and it ran very well, 150 in qualifying, and it did pretty well today.
All right. There you go. It was the Winston Eagle and Mark Tate stealing the show today in what was just an incredible day. And Jim Hall, you've been around for a lot of these Columbia Cups. How'd this one stand up?
Well, it was exciting. I really like this new format. You're getting racing every half hour. You're not having to sit and wait for these boats to get out there. They're going out and racing, and I know probably no one liked it more than Mark Tate and Steve Woomer, the Winston Hydros.
And we want to put forth our thanks to the people from the Water Follies who put on a great event all week long. Everyone here has worked extremely hard, along with the staff at KEPR, who has worked overtime and more overtime to bring you this broadcast today. Please join us in thanking all of them as we say goodbye from the Columbia River in the Tri-Cities in the Columbia Cup for 1991.
Goodbye.